welcome to the Brewer Spotlight. I have a professional brewer here with me today.
How's it going, eh?
So, if you could please introduce yourself to the adoring fans of Boss and talk about the number of years you've been brewing.
Hi, my name is Steve Camp, and I'm one of the founders of Boss, and I've been brewing since 1983. So that would be 38 years, I think. The last 6 has been professional here at Brewers Brewing Company. But yes, I've homebrewed for a long time. My kids help me brew, now they're grown adults. And, so I've been brewing for a long time.
It's a long time. That's a long time for sure. So, reach back now and tell me about the first beer you ever brewed.
First beer I ever brewed was a kit. It was called Suburbia.
Okay.
I bought it at a place on Irving Park and Boston called Brewing Beer. That's where I got my homebrew kit from, and it was just terrible. The second beer I brewed, I wrote one of my favorite styles is Hefeweizen, and I wrote the Tucher Brewery in Nuremberg, Germany, I think is where it is. And the brewmaster wrote me back and told me how to make it.
Nice.
That turned out exceptional. So that got me hooked.
I get that for sure. I get that. So, as a home brewer versus a professional brewer, right? So, like, what you have an overall love of beer, right? So, like, what are your favorite styles to brew versus your favorite styles to drink? Are they the same? Are they different? Like,
my favorite style of beer to drink when I go out, I usually get IPA.
Okay.
Just because I like IPA. It's not saying that other beers aren't great. Like tonight we're doing a tapping of the Dark Mile, which I think turned out really good. Favorite style to brew, I like to brew, when I was doing more home brewing, I liked something that was kind of a challenge. And now, as you know, our motto here is making beer flavored beer great again. So we're not doing a lot of fun stuff per se, but because now I have to actually sell it here. Mm-hmm. And I know that, there's a lot of breweries, and God bless them, make whatever you want. And I mean, there's some fun things out there, but for where we're at, in Crete here, people like Pilsners and Bocks and things like that. So, I don't know, I brewed some really fun beers. I brewed a candy porter one time where I melted down Clay's candies, and I had 4 different flavors of candy in a porter, and it was a total mess because some of the candy had wax in it, and I put it on the stove, and it's like the wax was like sticking all over the pot. It was just a mess. But the beer, I won some awards for that beer, so yeah, so I have actually made non-beer flavored beer before. But again, as a home brewer, you can make whatever you want because you don't have to worry about selling it. It's your hobby.
That's right. You make what you want, and you go from there. I love it. So, I guess overall, as a home brewer, even versus being a pro brewer now, what would you say is your brewing philosophy? Like, what do you say, drives you to make beer?
So when I started home brewing, there wasn't craft beer. There was imported beer, and then American breweries would sometimes make like a seasonal Bock or a holiday beer, that kind of stuff. So I think what drives me is brewing classic beer styles and doing them is, the best I can. As you know, I won a gold medal at the Indiana State Fair with our Lug Wrench Lager, which is the lightest, crispest beer I've ever had. I mean, it's an
awesome beer to have on tap.
It's really light, and I won the gold medal for it, which, in theory, that goes against everything that I stood for when I became a home brewer, because I was tired of drinking fizzy yellow water. And now that's like one of our biggest sellers. But it is a quality made product. It's made with Pilsner malt instead of 6-row. It's made with, not corn syrup. It's made with flaked corn. We use imported hops. I actually made that one with a decoction at one point just to see how it would work. It was good. But anyway, so that's kind of what my thing is I like to make. To me, there is a challenge there to try to make something that a German brewery would make. I want my Oktoberfest to taste like one that came from Germany. And we've had customers come in that were from Europe who we are alt beer, which may it rest in peace. We had a mishap and lost an entire batch of it. And to no one's fault. A hose came loose overnight when no one was here. Anyway, people from Germany thought my alt beer was spot on, and that's what gets me going there.
Get you in the feels,
right?
Get you right there, right? So, we'll focus on the home brew here. As a home brewer, what was your key piece of gear, your key piece of kit, or whatever you call it, that like you had to have, and that was your clincher to make your great beer? Like, what was that for you?
Honestly, when I was homebrewing, so I live in an old farmhouse, right? Well, there's no heat in the basement. Actually, what really worked out best for me as a homebrewer is I could make beers in my house because different levels of the house were different temperature. So I could make a really good Pilsner or a Dortmunder because if I put it in the basement, it was going to be 38 degrees down there. So it would lager properly. My equipment, let's just say I'm about as low-tech as it gets as far as when I was homebrewing. I mean, I still used my original plastic fermenters that I bought from my homebrew kit.
First kit.
And I mean, I upgraded, I bumped up to 10 gallons instead of 5 and, had the kegel to brew in. And I actually just had a guy make me another kegel so I could do bigger batches just because the volume was bigger. Mm-hmm. And I've never actually used it, unfortunately. It could be my pilot for the year, but we don't do pilot batches, so.
All or nothing here at Brewers. Right.
Yeah, so pretty much
the house.
It's the house.
The house.
I mean, one of my biggest things, like from judging, is you can tell when somebody let fermentation go off the rails and get up to like 80 degrees because it just creates so many off flavors in the beer. So, which brings me, this is a lot bigger, obviously, but it's so much easier to brew good beer on this system than it is homebrewing, just because you can control temperature. That's the biggest key, is temperature control, in my opinion.
And that's exactly the next question is what is your advice for homebrewers like that are just starting out? Like, what's that key driver for you?
I think if you've got a refrigerator or a freezer, that you can get a temperature controller so you can control the fermentation temperatures. That's the biggest key to making good beer. Because, I mean, if you're brewing in the summertime and your beer sits there and it's 75 degrees outside, the ambient temperature is 75, your beer is going to ferment probably at 85.
Well, in the 80s.
And it's going to end up with a lot of esters and possible fusel alcohols and off flavors that you really, really don't want. And that's the biggest thing, I think, is temperature control. We ferment all of our ales at 67 degrees, and I mean, it works out, I don't know, pretty good.
I think so. I ain't going to argue with you, that's for sure. So, why don't you tell us about what we're drinking here now?
Good story for that one. So, at the UKG competition, they always do like they do a raffle where, like, at the end of the day, you buy a string of tickets and then they put stuff on the table, call the number, if it's yours, that's what you got. Well, one year I won 10 pounds of Wireman chocolate rye malt and a pound of Sriracha Ace hops. And I thought, what am I going to do with this shit? I don't use chocolate malt in anything because I don't like chocolate malt. And I don't really, know anything about these hops. Well, So I did some research, found out that Saison is a good hop to, Sriracha Ace is a good hop to use in Saison. So I'm like, oh, all right. So I got halfway done brewing the batch of beer, and I thought, and I put some of the rye chocolate malt in it too, and I thought, man, I don't really want 10 gallons of Saison. I'll split the batch. I'll do 5 gallons of Saison, and I'll do 5 gallons of a black IPA. And I'll dry hop it with this Sriracha Ace hop thing. It says it tastes like lemon and dill, which is kind of weird. So, going forward, Lagunitas did a competition that was open to only Chicago homebrewery clubs, and each club had to pick the best beers, so do a mini judging from their members, and then submit one beer. Well, I remember it was between me and Brandon Banbury, who also was a professional brewer, but the one stipulation is had to use an American ale yeast. So his was like a Belgian yeast. It was a Belgian farm house ale or something like that. So mine ended up winning. Sent it on to the thing. I think there was 18 clubs that entered, and mine won. And I won a trip to go brew at Lagunitas in Petaluma because of this beer.
Okay.
And that was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. That was,
sweet.
That was my to that point, that was my biggest thing that homebrewing ever got me. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. So that's kind of where this is. So this beer, I entered it in the Great American Beer Festival competition one year, and the Sriracha Ace is just such an odd-tasting hop. They said, the judges told me that this should have been entered in the wood-aged beers because it's got a real cedar quality.
It's got a cedar note to it. That's what I was just going to say.
Cedar.
It's like cedar and dill, and then there's this roast character to the beer,
right.
But it's still light, and it's there's not a high alcohol perfume to it, but there's like that aroma note to it is like dillish, and there's a hop pungency to it, but
yep.
it's a very unique beer for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's not. There's a lot of black IPAs that were out there back in the day. This one actually, when we brew this, we actually saw quite a bit of it now. But they kind of fell out of favor, I think, because people were brewing like a porter and then just like dry hop them. Because there was a lot of really roasty black IPAs, which I don't think that was ever meant to be the spirit of a black IPA.
This is not that.
No, this is the color primarily comes from the chocolate rye malt. And I think I use a little bit of black malt in there too, just to make it a little darker. But I love the note that the rye gives it. It gives it like a sharp character, sharp flavor.
So this is dry hopped with the Sriracha as well?
It's dry hopped with Sriracha Ace as well, yeah. It's not 100% Sriracha Ace, but there's some in the boil and then it's dry hopped with Sriracha Ace.
All right. No, it's a very unique beer. It's a fun beer. It's an interesting beer. It's one that I'm really glad I could get the story out for, because that's what this is all about. So I appreciate that. So that's what we got here today. Friends of Boss, thank you for watching the Brewers Spotlight with my guest here, Steve Camp of Evil Horse Brewing. You can get the Gokudo on tap here at Evil Horse in Crete. And thanks for watching. Take care.
Adios, amigos.